What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
There's no evidence of that, Elon. What is the evidence?
I believe they have literally lowered the standards at Duke University, and that is what the article is referring to.
There's no evidence.
Saying they have not lowered the standards?
There's no evidence about lowering standards, and I think that there is.
Leave that as a false statement you're making.
Okay.
There is evidence that it lowers standards.
Listen, let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, that's been a target of yours lately on X. There was a repost of Ben Shapiro that you claim that DEI is killing people. Specifically, you point to medicine. You claim that DEI programs are putting people at risk. Do you really believe this to be true? And what evidence do you have to support it?
I am very interested in this discussion. I seen a clip of this on swarming around online, and I was like, I need to watch this whole video because Elon Musk is apparently debating Don Lemon on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and now they're primarily focusing on medicine. Usually this DEI is primarily, targeted towards colleges and admission process and so on and so forth and hiring at jobs. So I always, try to stay, in the mix of that type of stuff when it comes to the discussions. And I know Don Lemon, don't know exactly what he does. Maybe a pundit for the Democratic Party. I know he does that to an extent. Elon Musk, obviously, CEO, tech, he's siding with Trump. So this should be a good discussion. Without further ado, let's get right into it.
What I was referring to there was that if we lower the standards for doctors, such so that they, if the test for a doctor is lowered, then the probability of them making a mistake and killing someone is obviously going to be higher.
Wait, say that again. I'm not sure I understand what you said. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
Yes, if the standards for passing medical exams and becoming a doctor, or especially something like a surgeon, if the standards are lowered, then the probability that the surgeon will make a mistake is higher. They're making mistakes in their exam. They may make mistakes with people, and that may result in people dying.
What evidence do you have, though, that they're lowering the standards? There's no evidence of that.
I believe there is.
There's no evidence of that, Elon. What is the evidence?
I believe they have literally lowered the standards at Duke University, and that is what the article was referring to.
There's no evidence.
Saying they have not lowered the standards?
There's no evidence about lowering standards, and I think that there is.
Leave that as a false statement you're making.
Okay. Well,
I will say this, and I don't want to pick a side in this. There is evidence that it lowers standards, and the reason I say that is because I'm not going to talk about Duke University specifically because I don't have Duke's information. But if you say I want to admit 10% black people or 10% Hispanic people or 10% of any race, however, this demographic has lower test scores than the average test score, you are literally lowering the standard for a group of people. It would be different if Don Lemon said, what is the standard, or try to, argue that standards can be subjective, but he didn't argue that. He said that it doesn't lower the standard. But when you look at going into admissions or getting into a college, the main standards are test scores and GPA. And there is evidence that you need lower test scores, specifically SAT and ACT scores, if you are one race relative to another race. So yes, standards are literally objectively lowered if those are the standards you're using to assess whether or not DEI lowers standards.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
I think
the interesting thing is when this is posted on the X platform, there will be a whole bunch of things that rebut what you said and what I said.
Right.
And so people can then make their own decision based on the replies and the rebuttals and the community notes.
I think that's fair. But I do think that on this particular topic, I do think that you and Ben Shapiro are reaching in about this, because there was what Ben posted said that he gave instances of people who were deliberately harming people. Nowhere in the thread does Ben suggest at all, I should say, that anyone is being killed as a result of DEI. That's purely speculative. There's research on DEI and medicine, and there's no evidence that standards are being lowered, that DEI is affecting medicine. Actually, only 5% of doctors are black, and a small percent.
Yeah, well, I think you'll find that when this is posted to the X platform, that people will reply to it with evidence.
Okay.
And maybe I'm wrong. Let's see.
Okay. So, but that's my whole thing about moderation. Maybe you're wrong, but you'll put it out there. You don't know if it's right. Do you think that your responsibility to make sure something is right before you, the person who owns it, Elon Musk, who's a huge figure in the world, that you should know that it's true, that there are people at X who can get research for you before you put something out there like that? That's not necessarily true, even in other examples.
If I say something that is inaccurate, I'm immediately corrected on the platform. That's the advantage of a real-time system like X. So there will be immediately in the replies people correcting me. There will be a community note that will correct me, which is attached to the actual post itself.
Do you think as many people read
Yes.
You think as many people read that as it reads your tweet?
Yes, in fact, and if there's a community note that happens later that where somebody didn't see, but they replied to that or interacted with that post, we will notify them that there is now a community note correcting that post.
Mm-hmm. Just so you.
Whereas if you consider the conventional media, that doesn't happen. Conventional media makes false statements all the time and nobody ever hears the correction.
When I was in conventional media, I can only speak for myself. If I got something wrong, or if someone got something wrong on the platform that I was on, it was corrected, and we made sure that it was corrected. Now, I can't speak for anyone else.
I don't think that's a universal situation.
Okay. So I just the research. So when you talk, do you believe that people are dying because medical standards, DEI is causing medical standards to be lowered? Do you actually believe people are dying because of that?
I believe that if we lower the standards for what it takes to become a doctor.
But you're saying if we lower the standards,
yes.
But do you believe people are dying because the standards are being lowered?
I don't
or have
think
been
that
lowered?
is yet an issue, but it could become an issue.
Okay. But the actual evidence in history shows the exact opposite. If you look at how minorities are treated by the medical system, most doctors now are white. And there are lots of mistakes in medicine. So you're saying that white doctors have bad medical care? I'm trying to understand your logic here when it comes to DEI, because there's no actual evidence of what you're saying.
This is a very interesting discussion and a very good question posed by Don Lemon when it comes to the medical field and if doctors, if focusing on DEI will lower the standard. He initially turns the conversation to saying that the majority of doctors are white and that if you look at past medical practices, there is no evidence that focusing on DEI will lower the standard. Actually, I will say this. I think Don Lemon isn't necessarily wrong, but I don't think he's right. And let me elaborate. I think the problem with focusing on DEI is the problem with focusing on anything focusing on anything other than what's important in a subject. For example, the reason there's a lot of malpractice in medicine is because corporations focus on profit rather than saving the individual that they're operating on. So they tailor everything towards how can we make the most profit. If you're going to take this discussion, and I'm going to turn it back to DEI in a second, that's the problem with DEI. It's not necessarily the fact that DEI in itself is evil or DEI is wrong. It's the fact that programs take attention away from what really matters. And that's what happens in the medical field. Whether or not you want to say it's because of hiring more minorities or because of hiring more women, I don't have the data on, and I don't care about what race or gender a doctor is. What you should care about is, are they the best doctor? Does this make the most sense? Do these practices make the most sense? And when we start focusing on things that are irrelevant of the field, such as, and I'm sorry to say, DEI, when it comes to saving people's lives, that's when we have a problem. And the same thing is in admissions, or the same things in the school system. When you're focusing on how many black people can we get into our school rather than how can we make our school the best possible school despite whose race or gender is in the school, that's when there's a problem. And it's the same thing in medicine. It may not be because of DEI in medicine, but it's because of corporate greed in medicine. You need to focus on what matters. Point blank, period. And when we're even having this discussion, it tells me that we're not focused on what matters. Why are we talking about DEIs being the reason why doctors are killing people? It's white doctors who are doing this. Why does it matter what color doctors are killing people? We shouldn't let doctors kill people. We should want the best doctors, point blank, period. Why are we talking about the race of them or the gender of them? We should want the best doctors. We should want the best corporations, the most moral and ethical corporations. We shouldn't want evil, greedy corporations and a doctor because they look like me. Come on, man. This is a stupid discussion.
No, I said, so if the standards, like let's say, I think that particular thing was referring to surgeons. Let's say a surgeon is asked to, a surgeon in training is asked to do a series of operations under the supervision of a senior surgeon, and they get a bunch of those operations wrong. If that happens, and yet they are still approved to be a surgeon, the probability that someone will die, I think, at some point is high.
Okay, I understand that, but that's a hypothetical. That doesn't mean it's happening.
I didn't say it's happening.
You didn't say it was happening.
I said it will. I said if we lower standards, people will die.
But why respond to something or put something out there that has not happened? Because I could say,
Because I don't want it to happen. I think we don't want to lower standards.
Okay, if you look at the history of the medical industry, especially when it comes to Black Americans, it shows the exact opposite. If you look at the Tuskegee experiment and on, only 5% of doctors in America are Black. All of them are white. So are you saying that if the majority of doctors are white, are you saying that and there are still these inequities, right? And there's still mistakes. Are you blaming DEI for that?
No, I'm very, very basically saying,
I think they're having a different discussion. Elon Musk is saying that if you lower the standards, then people will die. And you would assume Don Lemon agrees with this because he's arguing that people are dying now and only 5% of doctors are Black. So he's saying people are dying today and only 5% of doctors are Black. Despite the racial statistics of doctors, he's saying people are dying today, which is true. So yes, if people are dying today and then we lower the standard again, more people will die. That should be common sense. The problem is that Don Lemon is arguing in favor of DEI, but he's not really acknowledging the fact that it can lower a standard, in my opinion. I don't think he's really acknowledging the fact that it can lower a standard. There's a difference between being an advocate for DEI and being an advocate for lower standards. It seems like he's kind of an advocate for both. What Elon Musk is saying is that he doesn't want the standard to be lowered. Elon Musk didn't technically or necessarily say he's anti-DEI. He's saying he's anti-lowering a standard, which DEI, when done incorrectly, does lower a standard. So by Don Lemon not acknowledging that, it makes me think he's not coming from a place of good faith. But I will say this. Elon Musk is not articulating himself in the best way right now. But let's continue.
That if we lower standards for what it takes to become a board-certified surgeon or, an oncologist or something where the kind of disease we're talking about, if you make a mistake, causes someone to die, then more people will die than if we don't lower the standards. Therefore, we should not lower the standards.
But why do you think they're lowering the standards for minority doctors or women doctors or?
That's what that's what that article suggested. Yes, at Duke University.
Okay. The evidence that I have shows that that's not true.
Okay.
So listen, after the door blew off this mid-flight, this Alaskan Airlines flight, do you remember that? You responded to a post claiming that the average HBCU grad was less intelligent than the average airline pilot, and stated that it will take an airplane crashing and killing hundreds of people for them to change this crazy policy of DIE. I don't know if did you misspell it on purpose, which it should be DEI. Do you believe that women and minority pilots are inherently less intelligent and less skilled than white male pilots?
No, I'm just saying that we should not lower the standards for them.
Okay. But there's no evidence that standards are being lowered when it comes to the airline industry.
You've repeatedly said that there's no evidence that standards are being lowered, and watch the replies showing all the evidence that it is.
Replies, though, on social media or on Twitter are not necessarily fact and evidence.
No,
that's people's opinion.
They will cite all the replies. In the replies to this, you will see how often the information is cited, showing that indeed.
So here's my problem with this. Don Lemon is actually more prepared than Elon Musk in this discussion. He's way more prepared. Elon Musk is citing social media for being on his side. I don't really know how to respond to that. You're saying that when this is posted, people on social media will be able to, defend your claims and stuff. I mean, probably so, because when you're on social media, people are pretty smart on social media. They know a lot of things. Like the people who watch my videos, they know things. Yeah, you're right, but if you're going to have a debate and if you have a strong stance on something, you should be able to defend it. And I know, like, oh yeah, you probably didn't think about this in a moment. No, if you have a strong opinion, I think you should know how to defend it. I feel like I've defended you better in this discussion than you have. And I don't even think Don Lemon is necessarily right in this. I will say Don Lemon is able to articulate his ideas better than Elon Musk is saying. I will say this though. Lowering a standard is wrong. Lowering a standard should not be done. I don't my biggest problem is this, is that it separates us. It polarizes humans. Why are we focused on having racial quotas? That we should just focus on hiring the best people, despite their race, despite their gender, despite where they're from. Just hire the best people, point blank, period. When we start focusing on these quotas and we should do this and we should hire from here, this is when the problems start. It's so simple to me. It's so simple. I don't know why this is a problem. I don't know why we can't do this. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. My name is Elafar JoJo, and I'll see you on the next one.